Kneel and take all 12 inches. Giant vampire king fills his trembling virgin nun. The night was heavy over Ebanspire, the ancient city perched atop cliffs that plunged into the restless sea. Moonlight danced across the jagged stones, silver tracing the outline of towers that had stood for centuries, bearing witness to kingdoms risen and fallen. The wind carried whispers, secrets of the old world, murmurs of power and of curses long buried but never forgotten. Sister Alara knelt in the dim chapel of St. Valon, her fingers entwined tightly over the cold stone of the altar. Candle flames flickered, throwing trembling shadows across her pale face. The air smelled of old incense, of wood smoke and secrets. She had always found comfort in silence, in the rhythm of prayers that seemed to stitch the world together. But tonight the silence felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were watching. Her eyes closed. She murmured her devotions, seeking the guidance that had always been her anchor. Yet a restless feeling gnawed at her chest, a sense that something ancient had stirred beyond the city walls, something both terrible and magnificent. Her prayers faltered as a soft sound, almost a sigh, drifted from the darkness behind the chapel doors. Elara's heart stuttered breath. She rose, cautiously, moving toward the sound. The stone floor beneath her bare feet was cold, biting, and she shivered despite the thick cloak around her shoulders. When she reached the doors, she saw nothing but shadows dancing in the moonlight. Yet the air itself seemed to pulse, as if aware of her presence, as if something unseen watched her every movement. From the far end of the chapel, a single candle flickered violently, then died. Darkness swallowed the space, and Elara's breath caught in her throat. A voice, smooth and commanding, echoed softly through the empty hall. "You do not belong here alone, Desp." Elara spun, her hands gripping the edge of the altar for support. There, in the moonlight that spilled through the stained glass, stood a figure tall and imposing. Breaths, his presence was magnetic, suffocating in its intensity. He was draped in a cloak darker than midnight, the silver clasp at his shoulder catching the faint light. His eyes, dark as the void between stars, fixed upon her with an unsettling mix of curiosity and something she could not name. I am Sister Alara, she managed, her voice trembling. Who are you?" The man's lips curved into a faint, enigmatic smile. "A traveler," he said. "One who has wandered long in the shadows. I am called Kaal, king of Ebanspire's forgotten nights." Elara's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and awe twisting in her chest. Stories of the Shadow King had drifted through whispered tales in the convent, legends told to frighten children or caution the faithful. He was said to be immortal, a being who walked between the world of light and the realm of darkness, neither fully mortal nor fully spirit. Some said he was cursed, others said he was a king without equal, both feared and worshipped.
"You," she stammered, "you are real! Another bar, and never really silent. As real as the night itself, each movement deliberate, elegant, and unnervingly silent. As real as the night itself," he murmured.
"And you are not afraid. That is rare."
Elara swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice.
I serve the light. I do not belong in the shadows. And yet, here you are, he said softly, almost as if discovering a hidden truth for the first time. His gaze did not waver from hers, and she felt as though he could see into the deepest corners of her soul, the parts she herself had never dared to examine.
"Tell me, sister, why does the light feel so small tonight?"
The question made her falter. Indeed, the chapel, with its comforting silence and sacred relics, suddenly felt fragile.
Vulnerable. She did not answer, because no words came that could explain the trembling curiosity in her heart. the way the darkness seemed to pull at her very being, without malice, without threat. Kyle's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, and he extended a hand, not in threat, but in invitation.
Come with me, he said.
There are truths in the night you were never meant to see, yet destiny has brought you here. Elara hesitated. Her life had been devoted to prayer, to devotion, to a structure she understood. Round. To step into the night with a being she scarcely comprehended would be madness. Or worse. Yet, the pull was irresistible. But it was not fear that guided her forward, but a fragile thread of curiosity, a longing she did not dare name. She took his hand. The moment her fingers brushed his, a shiver ran through her. Not cold, not painful, but deep, awakening something she had thought dormant. The candlelight returned in a sudden flare, bathing them in gold and shadow, and for a heartbeat, Elara saw the world differently. The chapel seemed smaller, fragile, and beyond its walls the city stretched like a living thing, full of hidden alleys, secret towers, and whispers that only Kale seemed to hear. They stepped out into the night. The streets of Ebanspire were quiet, draped in fog that clung to the stones like silver smoke. The wind carried the scent of rain and sea, of moss and cold stone, and the city seemed alive, as if it had waited centuries for this moment. Kale led her through winding alleys, his presence commanding the shadows to bend and shift around them.
No one stirred in the night.
Though she could have sworn eyes followed from the darkness. They passed gates that had long been forgotten, arches engraved with symbols she did not recognize, yet felt eerily familiar. "You must understand," Kale said, breaking the silence that pressed against her ears. "Ebanspire is a city of two faces. The light you see and the darkness beneath. One cannot exist without the other." And you are not meant to remain untouched by both. Elara's thoughts raced. Why me? Why now? Kael's gaze softened, though his eyes remained shadows themselves. Because destiny chooses the willing and the unwilling alike, and because some truths can only be understood by hearts that dare to break. She looked at him, at the impossibly tall, regal figure who seemed to command the very night, and felt an ache of longing she could not explain. It was a strange, bittersweet feeling, heavy with danger, yet intoxicating. The stories she had been taught warned against fascination with creatures of darkness. But there was something in Kale that transcended fear, something profoundly lonely, yet filled with power and sorrow. They reached a bridge that overlooked the cliffs, the sea churning below in shades of silver and ink. Waves crashed against jagged rocks, sending sprays of salt into the night air. Kale stopped and turned to her. "Look upon the night, Sister Elara," he said. "See its beauty, its terror. Know that to live fully one must walk in shadows as well as light. The choice will not be simple, and the path perilous." Elara's heart ached with the weight of the moment. She knew, without understanding how, that her life would never be the same. The world she had thought secure, defined by prayers and cloistered walls, now seemed small, fragile, and incomplete. Back, to return to safety, yet the pull of the unknown, the force of Kale's presence, and the promise of truths yet unseen, held her fast. Kale reached into the folds of his cloak and produced a small, blackened crystal. It glimmered faintly in the moonlight, a pulse of darkness contained within. He held it out to her. "This is but a fragment," he said. "There are forces at play in this city older than kings, older than saints. Power, loss, and love are intertwined. And soon you will understand why even the purest heart can be tempted by shadows."
Elara stared at the crystal.
It was beautiful, terrifying, and full of something she could not name. She felt her fingers ache to touch it, yet something in her whispered caution. Still, destiny seemed to wait for no one, and the crystal hummed with an almost imperceptible life of its own. Before she could respond, a sudden chill swept across the bridge. Drowned in desperation, the wind howled, carrying a scream that seemed neither human nor beast. Waves struck the cliffs violently, and the fog thickened, swallowing the world beyond the railing. Bray sharpened, and his posture stiffened as if sensing a presence that had been waiting for them.
They know we are here.
He whispered, his voice barely audible above the wind.
And they will not forgive trespassers lightly. Elara's heart raced. The pull of fear and awe twisted inside her, yet even as she trembled, she realized she could not step back, not entirely, for aspect. Something within her had been awakened, something that demanded she follow, that demanded she see beyond the walls she had always known. Desperate, Kale's hand found hers again, firm, grounding, and yet filled with a strange, inexplicable warmth. "You must decide, sister," he said. "Walk with me into the night, or return to the light and live with the knowledge of what could have been." Elara felt the weight of her world pressing against her chest, the duality of fear and longing, safety and desire. And in that moment she understood that the choice before her was far greater than herself, far greater than the walls of her convent. It was a choice that would change the fate of Ebanspire, of Kale, and of her own heart. Her breath caught. She looked at Kale into those dark, endless eyes, and for the first time she allowed herself to wonder what it would mean to step fully into the shadows. And then from the darkness a pair of eyes appeared, glowing, immense, and predatory. Something ancient had noticed them, something hungry, prey. And in that instant, the night whispered a single truth. The path they had begun would demand more than courage. It would demand sacrifice. Elara clutched Kale's hand, heart pounding, knowing that the story of her life had changed forever. The darkness waited, the city trembled, and the King of Shadows watched her with a curiosity that promised both peril and redemption. The wind screamed again, and the glowing eyes in the fog drew closer, unstoppable and inevitable. The wind carried the scent of the sea and rain as Sister Elara clutched Kale's hand, feeling the weight of his presence steadying her trembling heart. Below them, the cliffs dropped sharply into the black waves, the foam glowing silver in the moonlight. Great. Yet the predatory eyes from the fog were gone. Or perhaps hidden. Waiting. Kale did not speak at first. His gaze swept over the city, his expression unreadable, as if the shadows themselves whispered secrets only he could hear. Finally, he broke the silence. "They are close," he said softly, voice a low rumble, almost lost in the wind. "They guard what lies beneath the city. What I must protect." Psst. Elara's pulse quickened. Her mind raced with questions, but words failed her. Instead, she let her gaze drift to the vast night, to the cliffs, to the city that now seemed fragile and alive under Kale's watch. A strange longing, a dangerous curiosity rose within her. She felt that stepping into this world could never be undone. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "Do not fear, sister. I will not let the shadows claim you tonight, though the night itself will test you." The fog shifted, curling like fingers reaching across the streets below. And then, with a sudden hiss, it parted to reveal a narrow staircase carved into the cliffside. Ancient stone, worn by centuries, led downward into darkness. A faint light flickered far below, like a candle struggling against the void. "This way," Kale said, stepping forward. "What lies beneath Ebanspire has waited for centuries for someone like you to see it." Elara hesitated. Her life had been ruled by walls, by prayer, by careful obedience. breaths. Now, in the presence of Kale, she felt the sharp pull of destiny calling her beyond all that she knew. The fear was there, yes, but beneath it, an ache of curiosity and courage she had never acknowledged stirred. She followed him down the stone stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The air grew colder, heavier, carrying the taste of salt and stone. Candlelight appeared ahead, revealing a cavern that stretched beyond sight. Stalactites hung like silent guardians, dripping water into the black pools below. The shadows moved strangely here, bending, stretching, as though alive. Kale stopped at the edge of a bridge carved from black stone, spanning the cavern like a single line of obsidian across the abyss. Below, the waters reflected the dim light of glowing crystals embedded in the cavern walls, casting ripples of silver and green across Kale's pale face. "Do you see it?" he asked. Alara nodded, unable to look away. The crystals shimmered like stars fallen from the sky, yet something deeper, darker, pulsed beneath their glow. It was beautiful, terrifying, alive. She felt it stirring something in her heart, a mixture of fear and longing she could not name. "Those crystals," she whispered. They feel alive. Each holds a memory, a fragment of the city's past, of kings and queens, of love and loss. But there is one crystal that is different, ancient, powerful, dangerous. It waits, and it has called to me for centuries. Now, it has called to you as well. Alara shivered. Urge. She had grown up hearing stories of curses and kings who sought power beyond life and death. To see such magic before her, raw and alive, made the legends tangible. Yet she felt no desire to flee. The danger, the power, the pull of the unknown. It drew her forward like a current she could not resist. Kale extended his hand. "Will you cross with me?"
Her gaze met his.
Something unspoken passed between them. Trust, curiosity, and the quiet stirrings of a bond that went beyond words. She nodded, stepping onto the bridge, feeling the cold stone under her feet and the pulse of something alive beneath. The moment she reached the center, a shadow detached itself from the far wall of the cavern. It moved swiftly, silently, like smoke given form. Alara gasped. Kale's eyes darkened, and he positioned himself between her and the approaching figure.
A voice echoed through the cavern, deep and melodic, yet tinged with malice. "Kyle?"
"You dare bring another into the depths of Ebanspire?" The shadow coalesced into a figure, cloaked in black with eyes like molten gold. There was power in the way it moved, in the weight it carried, as though the air itself obeyed it. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, but she did not retreat. Something in the figure's presence felt familiar, as though it had waited for this moment just as much as she had. Kyle's voice was low but sharp. "I do not bring her to harm. She is part of what has been foretold. She must see. She must understand." The figure tilted its head, considering, eyes never leaving Alara.
"Foretold?" it whispered, almost as if tasting the word.
You think the prophecy bends to your will, Kale? The shadows are older than all prophecies.
Breath. You underestimate them. Alara swallowed, her hands clutching her cloak. Raish. Her voice was small, but steady. I am not afraid." The shadow laughed softly, a sound like wind through hollow trees. Breaths. "You are brave," it said, "but bravery alone cannot save you from what waits beneath. Only understanding and choice will." Kael stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Alara's shoulder. "And she will make that choice," he said firmly. "Not fear, not fate. Her own heart." The shadow seemed to consider this, then slowly receded into the darkness, leaving only a whisper. "The night watches. The night waits. Do not fail her, King of Shadows." Brace shakily. Her pulse raced, but she felt an odd sense of calm wash over her. The danger had come. The test had begun. Yet she sensed that she was not alone. Kael's presence, steady and unyielding, gave her courage she had never known. They continued through the cavern, moving toward a massive archway carved from black stone. Strange runes glimmered faintly in the crystal light, as if alive with magic older than memory. Kael reached out and touched the runes, and the archway pulsed, opening into a chamber that seemed impossibly vast. The room was filled with shadows that moved like smoke, shapes that seemed to whisper names and secrets long forgotten. At the center stood a pedestal, and upon it a single crystal larger than Alara could have imagined, radiating a light that was both cold and warm, beautiful and terrifying. "The heart of Ebanspire," Kael whispered. "The source of the city's power and its curse. It holds the memories of kings and queens, of love and betrayal, of lives lost and lives saved. And now it calls to you."
Elara approached, her steps hesitant but determined.
As she drew closer, she felt a strange warmth emanating from the crystal, as though it recognized her presence. Images flickered before her eyes, visions of the city in its earliest days, of battles fought and won, of rulers making choices that shaped generations. Brask, and then a shadow moving in the visions, watching, waiting. Kael's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. "Do not fear what you see," he said. "The crystal shows not only the past, but the choices we face. What you see may guide you, or it may challenge you. But it is not set in stone. The path is yours."
Ray.
Alara's eyes filled with wonder. She had never imagined such power, such beauty, such responsibility.
She understood now that the stories she had been told, the prayers she had recited, had prepared her for this in ways she could never have known. Yet fear lingered at the edges of her heart. "What must I do?" she whispered. Kael's gaze was steady, his dark eyes holding hers. "Watch, listen, and understand. The night will test you, as it tests us all. And one day you will choose, not for me, not for the city, but for yourself. And that choice will change everything." Breast. The crystal pulsed again, and Alara felt herself drawn into its light, not physically, but in a way deeper than body, into her mind, her heart, her very soul. She glimpsed lives she had never lived, possibilities she had never imagined, and the weight of choices she would one day face. The thrill, the fear, the beauty, it all converged, and she realized that the night, the city, and Kael himself had become part of her destiny. Him. Suddenly the shadows around the chamber shivered, and a sound echoed through the cavern, low and threatening. The predatory presence from before had returned. It was closer now, aware, intelligent, and dangerous. Kael's grip tightened on her shoulder, his voice firm. "By they come," he said. "You will have to prove not only your courage, but your heart." Elara looked into Kael's eyes, feeling the pull of something larger than fear, larger than choice. It was hope. And perhaps love. She stepped forward, toward the crystal, toward the unknown. The shadows shifted, the chamber trembled, and the night whispered a single chilling promise. The path ahead would be perilous, and only the brave, only the hearts willing to embrace both light and darkness would survive. Elara's breath caught, but she did not falter. For the first time in her life she understood that to live fully, to truly choose, she must step into the night, not with fear, but with courage, and with Kael beside her. And as the shadows moved closing in, she felt the first stirrings of something powerful and impossible, a connection that went beyond fear, beyond duty, beyond destiny itself, something that could change everything. The cavern trembled as Elara's footsteps echoed across the obsidian floor. The shadows, dark and alive, slithered along the walls and ceiling like smoke given form. Kali remained close at her side, his hand brushing against hers occasionally, not as a command, but as a reassurance, a lifeline in the suffocating darkness. Elara had never imagined that the world beneath Ebanspire could feel so alive. The air was thick, electric, carrying whispers in languages she could not understand, yet the meanings tugged at her heart. Stories, secrets, and long-forgotten memories seemed to swirl in the shadows themselves, pressing against her mind. But she felt a strange, disquieting thrill, a mixture of fear and wonder. Kael stopped suddenly, raising a hand. "This is the first trial," he whispered. "It is not of swords or monsters, but of the mind and heart. To proceed, you must face what you fear most, and what you desire most. Only then will the path forward open." Elara's stomach tightened. What? What does that mean? "It means," Kyle said softly, "that the shadows will show you yourself, the truth of who you are and who you could be." Breaths. And it will not be easy. The cavern walls seem to bend, folding in and out of themselves, light fractured and reformed, casting illusions that danced around her. Shapes of people she knew, faces of strangers, and glimpses of futures not yet lived appeared and vanished. But some made her heart ache, others made her pulse race with longing or fear. A figure emerged from the shadows, a young girl, pale and trembling, kneeling in prayer. Elara's heart froze. The girl looked just like her. "Break!" She reached out instinctively, and the vision mirrored her movement, whispering, "You are not strong enough. You will fail. You do not belong here." Tears stung Elara's eyes. Out in despair. She had always doubted herself, always measured her worth against rules and expectations. Now, in the presence of Kael, in this cavern alive with magic and memory, those doubts were amplified, twisted into something tangible. Kael's hand rested on her shoulder. "Do not listen," he said. "The shadows are cruel, but they cannot command you. Your courage comes from within, not from their whispers." Elara drew a trembling breath and closed her eyes. She imagined the girl before her, kneeling in fear, and whispered,
I am not her.
Elara. I choose my path. The vision shattered. The shadows hissed and swirled, recoiling, and the cavern fell silent for a moment. Then, faint light illuminated a new path forward, carved into the stone beyond a low arch. The shadows parted, as if granting permission to proceed. Elara exhaled shakily. It worked? Kael's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. "For now," he said, "the trials will grow harder."
You will be tested again in ways that will challenge your heart as much as your courage.
They moved forward, deeper into the cavern, until the air grew colder, almost biting. The walls glistened with frost that seemed to glow faintly in the light of the crystal Ilara still carried in her memory. The next chamber opened before them like a cathedral of ice, massive and hollow with frozen pillars that reached up toward a ceiling lost in shadow. "This is the trial of desire," Kale said, his voice reverent. "It is not merely what you want, but what your heart longs for most. And it can be dangerous." Elara's brow furrowed. "Dangerous?"
"A trial does not lie in the body," Kale said, "but in the heart."
"It will tempt you with visions of what you might lose or what you might gain. It will show you the path you fear, the life you dream of, and force you to choose whether to step forward or turn away." As if on cue, a figure appeared in the center of the icy chamber. At first, it was distant, silhouetted against the glow of frozen crystals. Rasp, as Alara's eyes adjusted, she realized it was Kale himself, or a version of him. He looked softer here, smiling, warm, approachable. The illusion spoke without moving its lips, words echoing in her mind.
Step closer, Alara, it said.
"You have walked with me through darkness. Now, imagine a world where there is no danger, no shadows, no fear. Just you and me, together, free."
Elara's heart leapt.
The vision was intoxicating, comforting, and yet terrifying. She wanted to step forward, to embrace the possibility of a life unburdened by fear, danger, or duty. But her instincts warned her this was not real. This was a test, a mirror of her desires, not the truth. Kale's real hand gripped hers tightly. "Do not lose yourself," he whispered. "Your heart is strong, but it is not immune. Look beyond what is easy, beyond what is comforting. See the truth of your strength." Elara shook her head and forced herself to focus. I will not be swayed," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "I will not choose only what I desire."
He glances around in despair. The vision dissolved like mist in sunlight.
The icy pillars shimmered once, then lost their glow, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled downward into blackness. The air here was colder still, biting at her skin and carrying a strange metallic tang. Kale led her to the stairs. "The final trial is below," he said. "It is the test of sacrifice. You will be asked to give something precious, not merely for survival, but for the sake of the greater good." Breath. Elara swallowed.
She had always prayed for guidance, for signs, for understanding.
Bray. Now she understood what those prayers had meant. Courage, wisdom, and selflessness. These would be her only weapons. Bess. And the thought of giving something precious, something she could not yet name, filled her with both dread and determination. The staircase descended into a vast cavern, where shadows moved with sentience. Shapes rose from the darkness, neither beasts nor spirits, but something in between. They were guardians of the trial, their eyes glowing faintly as they circled her and Kale. "You must face them," Kale said, without fear, without hesitation, and without doubt.
Elara stepped forward, feeling the chill bite her bones.
Psst, the shadows lunged, not with malice, but as if testing her resolve. She dodged and moved with precision she did not know she possessed. Each step, each breath, felt heavier than the last, but Kale's presence grounded her. His dark eyes held hers, unwavering, and she drew strength from that connection. One shadow lunged, faster than she could move, and she froze. Yet instinctively, she extended her hand. A surge of light burst from her chest, a warmth that had not been there before. The shadow recoiled, dissolving into mist. Elara gasped. She realized the light had come from her own heart, from her own courage and determination. Kale's voice was steady. Good. You are beginning to understand. The strength you need comes from within, not from any crystal, not from magic, not even from me. It is yours. Psst. Elara's pulse raced. She felt empowered, yet aware that the trials were far from over. The shadows continued to circle, but she met each with courage, stepping forward even as the air grew thick and heavy, testing her resolve at every turn. At the far end of the chamber, a pedestal emerged from the shadows. Upon it rested a crystal, smaller than the one in the previous chamber, but glowing with a strange, compelling light. Elara understood instinctively. This was the final test. She had to touch it, to claim it, to give a part of herself to prove her worth. Her hand hovered above the crystal, trembling. She felt the weight of her choices, the pull of destiny and the presence of Kale beside her. He did not reach for her hand, did not guide her. This was her trial, her path. Slowly, deliberately, Elara placed her hand upon the crystal. A warmth flooded her, filling her chest and spreading outward, illuminating the shadows around her. She felt herself stretched, tested, challenged, but never broken. She realized the sacrifice she was being asked to make was not of life or love or loyalty. It was of fear, doubt, and hesitation. The shadows writhed, testing her, until finally, with a low, resonant sigh, they dispersed. The chamber fell silent, the crystal's light fading to a gentle glow. Elara stepped back, breathing heavily but filled with an overwhelming sense of triumph. Kale's eyes, dark and unreadable, softened as he regarded her.
You have passed, he said quietly.
Breath. You have faced fear, desire, and doubt, and you have emerged stronger, wiser, and ready. Elara exhaled, feeling the weight of the trials lift from her shoulders. She had been tested, pushed to the limits of her courage and heart, and yet she had not faltered. Kale reached for her hand, this time not as reassurance, but as acknowledgement. You are ready, he said. Ready for what comes next. But beware, the true test is still ahead. The city itself, and the forces that guard it, will challenge us both, and the choices you make will shape not only your destiny, but mine as well. Elara met his gaze, understanding the depth of his words. She had come far, but the journey was far from over. The trials had prepared her, but the shadows of Ebanspire, the curses of the past, and the power that Kale guarded, all waited for what would come next. Breaths. And in the silence of the cavern, as the crystals pulsed faintly in the darkness, Elara felt a single truth settle in her heart. The night was not merely to be feared, it was to be embraced, understood, and, if she was brave enough, commanded. Breaths! She tightened her grip on Kale's hand. I am ready, she said, voice steady and firm. Kale's lips curved in a faint, approving smile. Good. Then let the city see what courage and heart can achieve. The city of Ebanspire lay beneath them like a slumbering giant, silent and shadowed in the early hours of night. From the heights of the cliffside, Kale and Elara watched the streets twist below, lanterns flickering like fireflies against the dark stone. The air was heavy, thick with mist and salt, carrying the promise of storm and change. Alara's hand found Kale's as they descended the final path from the cavern. Her fingers clung to his, not for protection, but for connection. Every step toward the city felt heavier, charged with the weight of destiny. The trials she had endured in the shadows had strengthened her, but the real challenge lay ahead. The city itself, alive with history, power, and secrets that had waited centuries for someone brave enough to confront them. "Are you ready?" Kale asked quietly, his dark eyes fixed on hers. His presence was steady, commanding, yet not overwhelming, an anchor in the storm. Hey, Elara drew a deep breath, though a part of her still trembled with the unknown. The courage she had found in the trials now burned brightly in her chest. She knew she could not falter. Not now. Not when so much depended on the choices she would make. The streets were eerily quiet as they entered Ebanspire. Desperate clung to every corner, moving as if alive, whispering warnings only Kale seemed to hear. The buildings themselves seemed to lean closer, as though the city itself watched their passage, testing their resolve. Kale led her toward the central plaza, where a massive stone fountain stood, choked with ivy and moss. The water was dark and still, reflecting the moonlight and the figures of the two travelers. But as they approached, the shadows began to gather, forming shapes both human and not, swirling around them like a living mist. "They are the guardians," Kale said, voice low.
Pray. They protect the heart of the city. They test all who would challenge its power. Elara stepped forward, feeling the warmth of Kale's hand against hers.
She had learned through the trials that fear could not guide her. Courage and heart must lead the way. She drew in a slow breath and held it, focusing on the connection she felt with Kale, on the strength she had found within herself. The shadows surged forward, coalescing into towering forms with eyes like molten gold. Their presence was immense, ancient, and impossible to ignore. Yet Elara did not flinch. Instead, she raised her head, meeting their gaze with calm determination. "You do not frighten me," she said clearly. "I walk this path with purpose, and I will not be stopped by fear or doubt."
The shadows paused, as if surprised. Then a deep, resonant voice echoed through the plaza.
"Only the worthy may enter the heart of Ebanspire. Prove your courage, or be consumed by the night." Kale stepped beside her, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Remember what you have learned," he said. "The trials have prepared you. You have faced fear, desire, and doubt. Now face this with your heart." Breath. Elara's pulse quickened. She reached into herself, recalling the warmth that had blossomed during the trials, the strength that had emerged from her courage, and the connection she now shared with Kale. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself, and then opened them with clarity. The shadows moved again, advancing toward her in unison. But she did not back down. She raised her hands slightly, focusing on the energy she had discovered within herself. A soft golden light pulsed from her chest, spreading outward like warmth through the cold night. The shadows recoiled, hissing, twisting, then retreating slightly. Kale's gaze met hers, approving and unwavering. "Good," he said. "Hold fast."
Let your heart guide you. Step by step, Elara advanced toward the fountain.
The shadows surged and fell back with each step, testing her resolve, but she did not falter. She felt the pulse of the city beneath her feet, the life that had slumbered for centuries, waiting for someone brave enough to awaken it. At the center of the fountain, a pedestal rose from the water, carved with runes older than memory. Upon it rested a crystal, larger than any she had seen, radiating light and shadow together. It called to her, not with magic alone, but with the weight of the city's history, the legacy of kings and queens, love and sacrifice, courage and loss. This is it. Cale whispered. The heart of Ebanspire. The city itself will judge your worth properly. Touch it and show that your heart is true. Elara stepped forward. Her hand hovered over the crystal. Memories of the trials, the fears she had faced, the desires she had resisted, the courage she had summoned, flooded her mind. The shadows seemed to draw closer, pressing against her, but she breathed deeply, letting the light within her expand outward.
She placed her hand on the crystal. A surge of energy flowed through her, warm and bright, intertwining with the shadows that pulsed around the city.
For she felt every heartbeat of Ebanspire, every whisper of history, every choice made and unmade by those who had come before. The shadows writhed, testing her resolve, but she stood firm, her heart steady. But Cal's hand rested lightly on her back, lending support, but she knew this moment was hers alone. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then a blinding light filled the plaza. Pace. The shadows screamed and twisted, but then, stillness. A light receded, leaving the city quiet, peaceful, yet alive in a way it had never been before.
Elara stepped back, breathless, and gazed at the crystal.
The runes glimmered softly, and the shadows that had threatened her were gone, or transformed. They lingered at the edges of the plaza, but no longer with menace. The city itself seemed to breathe, as if grateful for her courage, acknowledging her as its protector. Cale's eyes, dark and unreadable, softened as he looked at her. "You have done it," he said quietly. "You have faced fear, desire, doubt, and now the city itself." Bah! "You have proven your heart, Elara." Tears filled her eyes, a mixture of relief, awe, and something deeper. Pride, not just in herself, but in the bond she had formed with Cale, in the courage she had discovered within her own heart. "You believe in me?" she whispered. Cale's hand brushed her cheek gently, a rare display of tenderness.
"I do," he said. "You have shown strength beyond what I imagined."
"You have walked the night and emerged stronger. That is worth more than any magic, more than any prophecy." Elara felt her chest swell with emotion. She had faced darkness and come through unbroken, not because of magic or fate, but because she had chosen to trust herself and to embrace the unknown with courage. For a moment, they stood in silence, gazing at the crystal, the city, and the stars above. The air was calm, the shadows quiet, and the pulse of Ebanspire thrummed beneath their feet. Then Cale spoke again, softer, almost a whisper carried by the wind. "The trials are over, Elara, but the journey is never truly finished. The city, its magic, its history, they are alive, and they will continue to challenge us. But together, we can face anything." Elara nodded, her hand still in his. "Together," she agreed. She felt a sense of purpose she had never known, a connection to Cale, to the city, and to the strength within herself. She understood now that courage, love, and trust were intertwined, and that facing the night with an open heart could illuminate even the darkest shadows. The crystal pulsed once more, faintly as if acknowledging her presence, then dimmed to a gentle glow. The shadows that had once threatened the city were now guardians, watching over Ebanspire, not as enemies, but as protectors. Cale stepped closer to her. "There is one more truth," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "The heart of Ebanspire is not just the crystal. It is those who walk with courage, who choose love over fear, who embrace both light and shadow. You have become part of that heart, Elara. You have earned your place." Elara's eyes shimmered with tears.
I understand, she whispered.
"I will not forget," Kale's lips curved in the faintest smile, rare and almost human. "Nor should you," he said. "For the city, the shadows, and the night itself remember those who walk with courage and heart, and so will I."
For a long moment they stood together, hand in hand, gazing out over Ebanspire.
The city, ancient and mysterious, hummed beneath them, alive with magic and history, shadows and light intertwined. The night had tested them, challenged them, and revealed truths both painful and beautiful. And through it all, Helara had discovered the strength of her own heart, the courage to face the unknown, and a bond with Kale that transcended fear and destiny. And finally, Kale spoke, his voice low and steady. "The night is ours, Helara. But remember, the heart of the city beats strongest in those who walk its streets with purpose, with courage, and with love." Helara nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. "Then let us walk it together," she said. And together they turned toward the streets of Ebanspire, hand in hand, stepping forward into the living city, into the night that was no longer a place of fear, but of possibility, courage, and hope. The wind whispered through the towers, carrying a single truth. The night was no longer a shadow to fear. It was a path to walk, a song to hear, a story to live. And they would write it together, heart by heart, choice by choice, in the city that had waited centuries for one brave enough to claim it.